Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
So welcome everyone to the group chat brought to you by Overmark. I'm joined by Emmanuel and Leon, and we're going to be talking about excelling in English and GP. We all know how important these two subjects are, but yet they are not the easiest subjects for us to make significant improvement in. We hope to provide some insights and some quality tips to help you on your journey. So without further ado, maybe I'll just get Leon to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Leon. I'm a third-year student at NUS. I study law, and on the side, I do this YouTube channel where I talk about productivity tips, study tips for A-levels, O-levels, and I also talk about how you improve English. So that might be something down your alley, and you can check it out. Also, I talk about university application, and it's never too early to be briefed about what is beyond A-levels and O-levels. So personally, I have taught English for some time. So I taught a range of students, GP and O-level English. Really, I find that the most difficult thing is that how you write within the point. And sometimes it's quite hard for the student to learn. So this is why we are talking about it. But really, I think the key thing is that you have to keep practicing. Me, myself, I come from a Chinese-speaking family. Occasionally, we do speak English, but it's never a professional English that you would use for a presentation or for that purpose, how we would speak now. So it was particularly hard for me to master English, to speak it in a way that would actually prevail in a professional environment, and also to be in sync with the grammar, use a good vocabulary. And that was particularly difficult for me when I was younger. Yeah, so that was my background, and hand over the time to you.
Okay, actually, maybe I could ask you a couple of questions. I want to know actually, you seem to be someone who's very strong with your language, your words. You speak perfectly, and I really think that's very cool. Very few Singaporeans have the same kind of level of proficiency in English. So I want to ask you, was it actually something that was out of interest, or was it like, how was this like level of competence in English cultivated on your end?
The interest in English really stems from a very pragmatic mindset, because English is important in every subject you do in Singapore, or at least the working Western world, your US, your UK, all these are taught in English. Even if you think that you want to do engineering, a lot of it is still kind of English. You need to read the literature, so it is important. And I don't think I need to emphasize too much on that. But where the interest really arose was when in Sec 2, I almost failed English. I was, I think, the bottom 3 percentile of the entire school. So I was like the bottom 5 or 6. So that was quite depressing. Only then I decided, okay, I need to do something about it. I bought a book, I read it, I do book summaries, I do vocabulary drills and stuff. Very, very boring, but the way I learned English was through engaging the culture, watching English movies, listening to English music, and also to read books that actually interest me. I don't force myself to read Harry Potter. It has never interested me. I don't think it interests me. I like reading biographies. I have actually a lot of biographies behind Obama, I think, Becoming and stuff. These are what I like. And yeah, I just buy them, and gradually you have an interest. And I think this whole interest thing can be built. You may not have an interest initially, as I don't. And all the more is the case when you don't do well in a subject, because no one would have an interest in a subject that he or she doesn't do well in, and it's natural. That interest really comes about when you spend more time in it, you get a bit better at it, you get some confidence at it, and a composite of all these factors kind of would birth that interest, and you then deeper your interest, and now that's why I study law.
Man, cool backstory right there. I think there's something that I think a lot of Singaporeans we can relate to. I mean, beyond the fact that English is an important examinable subject at O-levels and A-levels, the impact of your language skills are far widespread and beyond. For example, if you travel overseas, right, if you speak in your like super Singlish accent, right, really people don't get you. And if you go overseas and you speak with others, your grammar, your vocabulary, your punctuations, that really helps to let people have a first impression of you. how they treat you and how they treat you professionally, I think even. Because when you grow up, you will be required to speak with your supervisors, with people you manage, or even make multiple presentations, right? And the way you carry yourself is really dependent on your language skills. And a lot of time, how you express yourself is also through language. So moving beyond just exams, right? For example, on personal relationship front, right? Sometimes you really need the vocab or the command of the language to be able to communicate effectively, right? So English as a language is more about communication as well. So while you might think about, oh, I need to get my A1 for O levels, or you want to get your GPA, right? Think beyond that and think about the widespread application of the language and how it has like a lifelong use, right? The fact that whatever you learn now is going to be so important. For myself, I really did not pay much attention to grammar because my parents weren't really like English people, right? So, I mean, they were speaking Mandarin, I was speaking Mandarin at home, and I never really paid attention to grammar. Till this day, I'm still struggling with my grammar, and that's something that I wish I worked on when I was younger, right? So I don't really need like Grammarly or autocorrect now, even though I'm still using it now. But that's a result of me not paying attention to taking care of my language skills since I was young. Okay, but I think moving beyond that, I think Leon, maybe I'll just get you to share a bit more. Based on your experience working with students, what are some of the things that students tend to struggle with the most when it comes to language and GP?
Off the top of my head, I can think of one. For language exams, usually you are tested on comprehension and writing essays, right? For essays, I wouldn't harp on the grammar, the vocabulary thing. The grammar thing, you just have to do the grammar drills, get marked by the teacher and stuff. Vocabulary, I think some of us overdo it. I was a try-hard student. I used the thesaurus. Everything that can be substituted, I substituted. And sometimes the result is not good. But the good thing is that I try, and I learned that that word shouldn't be used in this context. And if you don't do that, you never learn how to use that word. So it's a good thing. But you just don't overdo it and don't do that in the exam. The other thing is that for the essay, students would tend to have the tendency to write out of point. And this is really a thing about reading the question very carefully. And I always like to emphasize on this commonsensical approach to reading the question. People need to understand what it means by discuss and not try to memorize what formula the teacher said, what it means by discuss. For all you know, the teacher, just simply understand the word discuss and just package it to you in that formula, but try to understand where your teacher is coming from. And sometimes the question is asking a could versus a should, and they are very different words. Could, it kind of talks about whether it is simply possible or not. Should, whether it's kind of morally right, and whether one should do it even though he has a choice not to. So these are the very subtle nuances in English that students have to pick up right on the get-go when reading the questions. So I think the reading the question part is important, and students often write out of point. And even if they get the point correct, the manner in which they write for the English essay might not necessarily fare them well in the English exam. They could be incredible creative writers, and it's one of my friends. He didn't do well in English because he wrote about Superman and stuff. This is a Singapore exam, it's not very creative. You just do what you need to get well in the exam. So I think you need to be very clear about the examinable criteria, and to stick with that format of writing, not to be too flowery, not to be too verbose, and really to write it very succinctly. Yeah.
Wow, I think that was a very important pointer that you really touched on. So maybe I can share a bit of my own experience lah. So actually I used to do well for school exams in Sec 4, but then I didn't do well for my O-level exams. So I still remember like being like the top few, actually the top in my prelims, but I came out with a B3 for O-levels itself. So I was very distraught by that. But I will want to share my experience so that the listeners here actually can avoid the same mistake. So the reason I believe I didn't do as well as I wanted to was because of writing out of point. I wrote out of point for my essay. So my comprehension skills were definitely okay. But for this one particular essay, I didn't actually quite answer the question the way it demanded to be answered. So one thing that I hope a lot of students are actually doing as practice is writing out topic sentences. So okay, maybe this isn't too applicable for people who are used to writing narratives or descriptive essays. But if you're going for a expository or argumentative essay, then really please listen to what I have to say. I want you to avoid the same kind of a grudge I had against English in my O-level days. So one thing I wish I had done was just practice writing topic sentences that were very effective in engaging the question directly. Had I done that, I know without a doubt I would have gotten an A. But because I hadn't had enough practice, I didn't get enough practice. I was very I think I was even like complacent because I always thought, okay, English is my strong suit. I'm gonna do well for this paper. And then turns out I was scammed. Okay lah, a victim mindset. Okay, but definitely something that was very rough for me to go through. So just tackling that one thing really pushed my grades up for A levels. So in A levels, I was lucky enough to actually get the help of my sister right before exams. Okay, so shout out to Victoria. Okay, she used to be a teacher in CJ also, and she taught me like a couple of months right before my A levels. And with her help, I managed to pull up my grade to an A. And the whole while, right, she identified my problem as just having topic sentences that were beating around the bush, right, and not quite answering the question directly. So I think, well, if it is a problem that I face, I think that maybe quite a few other Singaporeans might share the same problem. And that problem is so easy to fix. You just need to really like hone in to make sure that your topic sentence, literally the first sentence that you write for your body paragraphs, answer the question. Because that is the structure that makes sure that you are writing within the demands of that question and that you are tackling the key objectives of that question. So if you are listening to this and you think that you've got it in the bag, please, okay, don't make the same mistake as me. When you're doing your practice for your upcoming exams, right, make sure you write a proper draft of your body paragraphs, starting with the topic sentences, and then get your teacher, right, to vet those. Because if you are able to write effective topic sentences, then the rest is just making sure your grammar is fine. And for most people that come from English-speaking families, this should be trivial for you, okay? Because you already have the syntax in your head. You are not usually prone to making grammatical errors. So if you are adopting the right strategy, you will get there. So that is my biggest sharing. I really hope I change someone's life to make sure he doesn't have to go through the same kind of nonsense I did. That's why it was very, very annoying. I had a very big grudge. So okay, just to share a bit on this, right? Because I feel very strongly about it. I'll let y'all know that it was something that really haunted me lah. So when I was in A levels, right, I had this very very aggressive mindset towards the languages. So I took H1 lit also. Then I make sure, right, like Leon said, I tried damn hard. I really go and find like all the different literary devices. I go and find basically everything I could to step up my game. Oh, and one thing for all those, maybe like if you're A-level listener, this could be something that's very helpful. I still remember every single morning on my commute to school, I wasn't wasting my time scrolling through Instagram. I wasn't wasting my time texting my friends. What I was doing was I was reading BBC News articles. It's something that is extremely powerful because without you knowing, as you're reading through things, right, the syntax naturally flows into your head. It's something that is extremely powerful because if you're experiencing writer's block, you just haven't read enough. You just really haven't read enough because the syntax of proper sentences are just not coming to you because you're not too familiar with it. If you're reading articles on the daily, right, then forming sentences to articulate what you mean should be natural already. And I promise you, right, it won't take so much effort. One other thing was I used to like track, right? So like on my commute school, I used to track all the words that I didn't know. I put it in this note app. So on the commute to school, I'll write the words that I didn't know. And then on the commute back, I'll go and use a dictionary to find what that means. And over the like 3 months that I was doing this before my A's, I like accumulated something like 500 different words. And I knew how to use them properly. So that really put an edge for my A levels. That gave me an edge to make sure that I was hitting the language requirements. So I just hope that this sharing really helps some of you improve your English as well. And yeah, so make sure you don't make the same mistake as me. And the other last thing that I want to point out is a lot of you guys sometimes feel that reading is so boring. I used to think the same. Like, okay, truth be told, right? I hate reading. Okay, you know why reading doesn't make sense? Like when teachers tell you just read a book, just find something to upgrade your skill. That's nonsense. You know why that's nonsense? Because English is nothing but a medium. It's a medium for you to find knowledge. Obviously, you're not going to find any interest in English. English itself will not bring anything interesting to you. You should be interested in many different aspects of your life and use English as the medium to find out about those, right? Find out about those topics you're passionate about. So for me, when I was in A levels, I was very interested in terrorism. The reason why I say that was because it was during ISIS period, where they were just terrorizing the entire world actually. So I love reading those articles because and forming a perspective on them. Because I was wondering how can rational human beings who have empathy act in a certain way. And so I use English as the medium to learn about these people, learn about their perspectives. And then I realized, oh, actually it's quite a gray area, right? Nowadays, like the media likes to paint things in a very black and white way. But like the deeper and deeper you go into it, you realize, wow, things are so gray. So that is what I found very interesting. And okay, I do not condone terrorism. I hope that didn't come out that way. Not at all. I just want to say that if you're using English to just upgrade it as a skill, you will never get there. You should instead use English as a medium to find out things that you're passionate about. And naturally, you'll see your English improve. That being said, of course, use the right channels. Don't expect reading comic books about like fictional characters to take you onto the next level. That's not going to happen. Find out something that you're passionate about and at least use a professional medium. So for me, that was actually online articles that were legitimate lah. They were written by people who actually were journalists. So then obviously you adopt that same kind of syntax in your head and you'll naturally be good at it. Okay, but remember, don't try fighting it. Don't go and force yourself to read something that you're not passionate about. It will just you'll be so tortured like trying to do that. So don't even bother. Find something you're interested about and then read deeply into that. Hopefully by like proper sources with proper grammar, proper vocabulary. That's my take on it lah. Okay, but I'm sure. Okay, I'm not the expert in this. Leon, what do you think? What would the best strategies be to improve syntax, to improve vocabulary, and maybe just form a worldview?
Right. I think you've put it very beautifully. English is a medium in which you acquire information. I don't think I'm the expert. I'm not a linguist. I happen to use English as my rice bowl, basically. So as the same thing, English is a medium in which I conduct my business and to help people solve their problems. So I think I answered the point about how to get it, how do you improve on English, coming from the perspective of really teaching English myself. So I think I'll split it up into a few parts. Number one, it's grammar. Number two, it's vocabulary. Number three, it's the style of writing. For grammar, really, as Emmanuel has mentioned, you either do grammar drills or you read the news. I would take reading the news. Vocabulary drills is so boring. I've never actually liked it. I've never done much of it, and I wouldn't encourage anyone to do it because it's so boring. Why don't you just listen to BBC? BBC is good. The Guardian is good. Straits Times is extremely good as well for Singapore news. Even though with the in GP you might learn that Straits Times is about 160 in the world press freedom. But if you look at the quality of the articles they produce, it's actually very fair. And and all these different matrix doesn't really sometimes it's not really justified, I find. So the Straits Times is very accessible. If you want, I think you can just subscribe to that. For myself, I read Financial Times because I think at the university that's kind of what we're expected to read. So use the different various free sources, and also BBC. The first thing I read in the morning is BBC YouTube. Just to check what is going on in the world. And if you hate reading, just use the BBC YouTube app or listen to the BBC podcast. So that's for grammar. For vocabulary, I think I echo what Emmanuel said as well. I actually memorized quite a bit, 5 a day once. But really, there are a few parts about memorizing and just using an essay versus memorizing to the extent that you have actually integrated it into your own repository of vocabulary that you can use, like right now as I speak. So those are two different levels, because when you write, you're more deliberative and you can think and you can search a dictionary and stuff. So really try to get to the point where using that language is actually innate. And how you get there, you can do vocabulary drills, you can memorize, but I think the best way really is to read the news. So try to force yourself to start, but read something you like. It is less torturous, and actually it is more interesting for your own learning as well. The next thing is the structure of writing. I think Emmanuel put it very well. The topic sentence thing is actually a very big thing. The PEL thing, I'm sure everyone is familiar, but I thought I would just kind of shine some light on how I understand it. Because although everyone talks about PEL, the way in which one uses it might be different. So I'm just going to talk about how I use that. Point is basically, to me, the topic sentence. Get straight to the point. You don't need to have too long a sentence. Get straight to the point. The more succinct, the better. The reason is simple. Usually when I mark the essay, when someone marks the essay, you look at the first sentence on the paragraph, you want to know what's going on for the rest. And if you cannot decipher, it just makes it very, very hard to read. And I understand that sometimes you read journal articles and stuff, it is not the case. But for the sake of the exam, I think it is very important that the first sentence, I want to know, what is this paragraph saying? Are you agreeing? Are you disagreeing with the proposition or the thesis statement you have above? Next is explain. Explain the point, elaborate a bit more. Third one is example, give a relevant example. And the fourth point about evaluation is something that is particularly difficult for everyone, because no one actually knows what evaluation means. I think the way that I look at evaluation is to understand, can you critique about its validity, its applicability in the local context? Talk about something like how it doesn't really apply, but nevertheless, it may still apply to a certain extent. Really evaluate the extent to which it applies, kind of thing. So I think that you would have to ask your teacher and really drill down on evaluation. But the first thing, get the point right. And also I think, so the point is really for the intra essay structure, the different sub-body paragraphs. But another thing is called the thesis statement, which is essentially in your introduction, you should have a hook, you should have a bridge, and then you have a thesis statement saying whether you agree or disagree with the question. That thesis statement is extremely important, because in reading that one sentence, I expect to know where you stand and to what extent you agree with the statement. So I agree with X to the extent of what. You kind of want to make it clear. And if you're not very good at it initially, it's perfectly okay to make it quite mechanical. I initially write in a very mechanical style, but you got to start from somewhere. Rather than if you're always marked down for being too flowery, or you're just not really answering the question, being too vague, try to write in a more mechanical way. The point is this, my thesis statement is this, and this is especially the case when the exam is you only have that amount of time. So write in a very concise way. So I think this is my best tip to go about it.
I think for me, my point of view would be a lot more from a student that always struggled with English. So I think for Emmanuel and Leon, okay, you're on the right track. But for me, I was always in the B range. And even at O-level, at O-level, I only got a B3. At A-level, I only got a B. So I was never really the bright student that was always acing English and finding things easy. I think for me, a significant leap that I was able to make, right, moving on from a C to a B to where I eventually got to, that was happy enough for me, that was good enough for me, was that I found a lot of safety in keeping things simple and straightforward. I realized that before that, my narrative essay, because I used to read a lot of novels and fictional books, right? So the plots in my head are always like super complicated and like always with an insane plot twist. I don't want to share the details of them, but like to me, it's very exciting. But then I realized that, okay, my plot is amazing, but I never really expressed it well. For narrative, it's really not about your story or your plot, but it's the way you bring about to the climax, the way your language describes the whole experience, your emotions, your five senses and things like that. So I realized after a while, when I actually slowed down to think about it, actually, yeah, I could just like keep it simpler, keep the plot a lot simpler and focus more on how I write. And that really helped me a lot. As I move on to JC, I realized that actually the safer approach would be to go more of the argumentative, discursive route that I think a lot of people would pivot to. Then from there on, I realized there's a lot more structure in terms of exactly what Leon talked about, the hook, the thesis, the topic sentences, your PEEL, right? So it became a very simplified format of writing it, but I never really broke the barrier. So for myself, what I realized was that for those essays that I tend to perform better in, it just happened to be coincidentally topics that I had knowledge on, right? So for example, it was about sports because I was very into, soccer and at the time, and then all the club transfers. So I knew exactly how to quote how much Cristiano Ronaldo was transferred to Real Madrid, so on and so forth, right? So I could use those examples to validate my whatever point I was trying to talk about. But I realized that actually ignorance is not bliss, in the sense that other than those areas, very niche areas on life that I interest in, I had no other knowledge of external stuff. And when that happened, right, and it became a topic that I couldn't really talk about sufficiently just because I didn't have enough knowledge on it, it came back to bite me. And I did very badly for those essays. So it became more of like a coin flip whether I could do well or not. So how I really circumvented to make myself more knowledgeable was in terms of reading more. So rather than right now for you, rather than scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, think about reading news articles that could really give you more of a worldview. Think about it. If the Cambridge examiner is reading a piece of essay and it looks similar and identical with the next student and the previous student that they read, because it's all about your student life, and then they all the context or whatever you're discussing is so limited because your field of competence is so small, nothing is really going to impress them. You won't walk away with the grade that you're thinking you would have gotten away with because everybody's writing like similar things. But imagine if you're able to discuss like more global issues on a more globalized basis, you're able to quote examples from outside of Singapore, that really gives you an edge in terms of your PEL, the example portion, and your evaluation portion. You're able to bring in so much more juice. And I think that's an area that everybody should think about how they would want to expand their field of knowledge. And I think that makes a very big difference. So for me, I'll keep it simple because I'm not an expert and I've never really done well. But one thing that definitely worked for me was expanding my knowledge sphere. And I think because I used to be from debate as well, so having a very critical mindset in terms of for and against, and knowing the arguments exactly how I'll structure it became very important because I realized for argumentative/discursive essays, right, a key thing is not only about stating and elaborating on the point, but making your stand very clear and pinning that down for yourself. Like if you're against this, right, you need to have a very strong argument for it. And knowing how to structure it in a very convincing way will make your whole entire essay flow very well, right down to your conclusion, and you end off with a bang. Then you're like, okay, I convinced the examiner. That's when you know you wrote a good essay. So for me, I think that was what was a game changer for me in terms of making sizable and quantifiable improvement over time. Now, I think I'll throw back to Leon for this last segment, our favorite, right? Dilemma of the week, right? So right now we're talking about this, right? Sometime in August, and we know that the national exams are just around the corner, right? So most of us, we have 2-3 months left, right? So is this sufficient time to make significant improvement for our language?
Oh, I think that one very hard. Honestly, you got to be realistic yourself. The fastest I took, I was failing English in Sec 2. In 1 year, I was top of the cohort. I took a year. It's not that easy to make a big improvement. But you can take baby steps. For example, like okay, oral and stuff is done, but I always find comprehension to be easier than essay because it's more structured. And if you kind of mess up one part, it doesn't really affect the other part. Whereas essay, if you mess up one part, your whole essay is gone. So work on the comprehension, do comprehension over and over again, do it like how you do for math, and to really try to adopt a very commonsensical approach to comprehension and try to score as high as you can. My tutor used to say that if it's a GP exam 50-50, I'm not sure the syllabus has changed, assuming that's 50-50, compo I should be getting close to 40, at least 37 to 40, because I've never scored more than 35 for my essay in GP back when I was in JC. So if I can get 40 for my compo, that means 30 marks for essay. It's difficult, but it's easier than asking you to score 40 for essay. I don't know about you, but I always find it easier to do a 40 for compre than 40 for essay. So that is what you should try to do. If you want a big improvement, you do need to hire a private tutor because English is not a subject I find that you can teach yourself like math. I always advocate that if you can teach yourself. But English, absolutely not, because it's a conversational subject. You need people to exchange your ideas, and you're not going to mark your own essay, because if you mark your own essay, you'll be very self-righteous thinking that you're right. So it is not impossible, but I think you need to be realistic. And for those of people who can make a big improvement, you probably already have it within you to do well. It's just that suddenly you understand how to write the essay well. So it really depends on where you stand. But if like your weakness stems from a poor grasp of language, I think that one is quite hard. But if your weakness stems from the ability to understand questions, hire a tutor, essay every week. If you cannot, 2 essays per week. The more, the merrier. And also spend more time understanding where it went wrong, then just keep writing essay over and over again. So that's my answer.
Well, I really second that. I feel that like what Leon mentioned, for English, you do need somebody to critique your work. It's not like math, there's a answer key for this. So yeah, actually, my mom used to tell me, some backstory, my mom's a HOD of English for like 30 odd years in St. Pat's. So she used to tell me that she had students come up to her that were not from her own class, asking her to mark their essays. And as the HOD back then, she's still obliged. Like, okay, I'm quite sure that if you were to approach your HOD or the teachers that you are more familiar with in your school, the English teachers, of course, to mark your essay, I'm pretty sure some will be quite delighted, especially if you're from like one of those driven schools, right, where they like motivated students. They'll be more than happy to mark. Right now, I'm also tutoring econs. So every time some of my students ask, man, can me mark my essay? I'm extremely happy. I always tell them, yes, give me more. Give me more. Even though it adds on to my workload, I'm still having like that sense of joy that my students are taking ownership of their progress. And as a teacher, like nothing can be more heartwarming than finding a soul, like a student, right, who's really like pushing his boundaries to make sure that he gets that A. So pushing his limits to get his A. So I feel that most teachers probably stand on the same side as me. They also want motivated students, and like motivated students are the easiest to teach. They're the easiest to teach. They are the most fulfilling to teach as well, right? Because you really do make a very, very clear, visible impact in their lives and in what they want to achieve. So if that's you right now and you're like, like not somebody who wants to get tuition, or if you don't already have tuition, try just drafting out a couple of essays and getting your teachers to mark it for you. I feel that that is the best surefire way, right, to improve. Of course, please don't write like 5 essays at once and then submit it to your tutor. First of all, that's overwhelming for your tutor. Second, for English, it is always improvement after review. So if you go and write 5 essays at once at the same exact standard, what makes you think that within like the 5 essays you magically improved? There's no point in that. So go and write 1 essay, take the feedback seriously, of course, improve on your writing skills, then write another essay, and then let your teacher vet it. So that's one of the surefire ways to improve. Okay, of course, I can't say that you improve to an A1 overnight or like over a month, right? Leon would have a better understanding of the time frame that a typical student will require to improve leaps and bounds. So personally, I feel that just keep yourself on track. Do what I said, write a couple of essays, find your tutors, go and get your essay professionally marked. That's my take on it. Any other tips, Leon?
Not really a tip, but more like an advice. I think ultimately English is really the medium in which you acquire information. Don't lose that, because if you look at it, after a while, right, if you look at it, there are very confident speakers of English who don't necessarily do well in the English exam. And the reason is simple. The oral ability of a person is quite different from the writing ability. And because the exam tests a very specific set of skills, it could be that you get a B, you get a C, but you're extremely confident speaker and you are a great presenter, and there's no conflict between that. So I think try your best, but don't be too hard on yourself. But at the same time, of course, it's important to improve your writing ability. But yeah, I just think don't be too hard on yourself if there's 3 months left. Just 1 essay a week if you really want to push it. I did 1 essay a week. 2 is a bit too much, frankly. 1 essay a week is as far as I would go. Maybe, if you think that cost is a concern, mark your own comprehension yourself. So don't waste the tutor's time. If you have a private tutor, just drill on the essay. And sometimes I think increasingly there's a lot of online tuition, and some people kind of like do ad hoc tuition. They just mark one essay and give you the feedback and kind of move on. So you can kind of opt for these kind of things, whatever floats your boat, really.
Yep. I think for me, just to quickly add on in terms of how I did my preparation, for me, I did it the more like, I wasn't so holistic lah. So how I approached it was that for narrative, when I was doing it at O-level, I came out with a few plots, maybe like 8 to 10 in my head that I could easily, pull out. So if the keywords hit one of those plots, I roughly knew what I was going to write. Not exactly the best, because sometimes you might like go off track a bit. So you kind of need to be prepared to adapt some of your stories or some of the keywords. But I thought that was an effective way in terms of ensuring that I save time, and also to study maybe some more relevant vocabularies that I could use. If that works for you, great. If it doesn't, don't have to follow it. Then for more like discursive, argumentative sort of essays, when I was doing GP in JC, what I did was that I tried to come out with my thesis and followed by 3 topic sentences, and ensuring that I had a good example for each of those topic sentences. So that was my sort of preparation, because I didn't really have the time nor the energy to write an essay and get my teacher to review it. I was kind of like more of an independent learner. So that was my own method to the madness. So if this works for you, go ahead and try it as well. I think overall, I think what we hope to bring for this episode is that 3 months, there's still time, there's still time for you to make good significant improvement, but of course keeping your expectations realistic. I think for Leon himself, I was speaking to him because he's super busy, right? He's like a law student and all. So he also does a bit of like an ad hoc sort of review basis with students. And I thought that might be something that if our listeners, you're keen, feel free to reach out to him. We'll definitely link his contacts. So if he's free, and he's available, go and ask for his help, maybe book a session or 2 with him, consultation in terms of how you can improve. And I think that might be something that's very useful. For sure, I think on Overmark itself, we also do have some resources provided by our GP tutor, Victoria. So feel free to reach out to her for help too, or if you need more resources, you can always request for it. But I think all we're trying to do here is to help you take the next step for English and GP, and hopefully this podcast has been conclusive enough to help you in whatever small ways, right, to get closer to that goal of yours. I think with that, we come to the end of today's podcast. I hope everybody enjoyed tuning in. If you're still here with us, thank you for listening it through. Give us a like, leave us a comment if you'd like to. And I think most importantly, take that significant step towards your GP in English, and we hope you can get the grade that you want to. Any last shout out from you, Leon?
I think I forgot to mention this point, and the 3 of us didn't mention. It's very important to learn to answer the question. And answer the question is simple. It sounds simple, but it's not that simple. So work on that. I think that is your antidote. If you're kind of poisoned for too long because of not understanding how to answer the question. But yeah, if you would like, I actually made a video some time back about how to write an essay in concise 45 minutes. And that was really more for like law school applications and all the tests. But actually the principles are simple. It's the same structure, the PEL, and how you structure the whole body, paragraph, counter arguments and stuff. So you can check that out. It's a quick guide. So that might be helpful. Hope you can come by my channel whenever you're free, and just drop me a message and I'll be most happy to help out.
Yep. So with that, we come to the end of the group chat. Thank you, Leon, so much for taking your time out to speak to our listeners. If you're keen to go and check out Leon's channel, there's tons of good content. Like when I saw it, I was like, wow, we definitely had to get this guy on our podcast, because I'm sure all our listeners out there will have benefited a ton. We'll put the link to his YouTube channel in the description. So feel free to go and explore. There's tons of good materials, good content that I think you should go and check it out. And I think with that, we'll see you in the next podcast. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
All right. See you guys. Study hard.
It sound right, boy.